Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is Monday, Cinco de Mayo, but we're not having a conversation about Cinco de Mayo. We're having a conversation of what AI is going to look like in 2027. In fact, we are going to be talking about a paper, not really a report, a bit of fiction, maybe a bit of nonfiction that came out in this sort of new essay, if you will. It's less about forecasts; it's more about a framework. And the farther it goes into this essay, the more things get a little bit murky, right? So we want to discuss what's in there, who these authors are, like who are the people who decided to come up with this, why did they decide to come up with it, what's their pedigree, their background in AI, and are they the right people to be listening to, but also just to kind of look at the framework and discuss it as where we see our current trajectory as we're sort of approaching, well, it's May, so we're approaching mid 2025. So where are we approaching, and where is this going? And could their guesses, their forecasts of what maybe a end of the year in 2027 be correct? And also, what I really love, you guys have heard me say this before, I love a good choose your own adventure. And what I love is this particular essay ends with a which way do you want to go? So we could talk about the two options they give you. One is more of a pullback, one of them is all steam, all ships forward. So we'll talk about that. Okay, like I said, today is Cinco de Mayo. It's Monday. Welcome. This is the Daily AI Show. We're here every single weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So you can always join us live, and as we've already had people do in our chat on YouTube. That's the best place to join the conversation live. Of course, if you can't make it live, we totally understand, but that doesn't mean you don't get to be part of the conversation, because we have our new community on Slack, and you can sign up for that. It's free. It's called, go to the Daily AI Show community.com. You'll see the Slack sign up and you can join the conversation. So we have all sorts of interesting people in there sharing all sorts of different insights about AI, not just about the show, but just generally a really great place to be. So don't feel like you're missing out if you just can't be with us alive. We know a lot of you can't. Okay, with me today, we have Beth, Andy, Jinmi, and Brian. And so, yeah, I gave a little bit of an intro to this, guys. I will tell you, I read it in full this morning as I was prepping for this. And I found it really, really fascinating. I thought they did a really good job. It was kind of like reading a little bit of sci-fi at points, but I think that was kind of part of the process. What was your guys' initial, before we get into the details, what was your initial feedback of or thoughts about just sort of, I don't know, the writing style, how they decided to convey this information? Because they certainly could have done it in more of an archive type report, right? But it seems that they chose this path of a more fiction, I guess, without it being so, but like that style. So what was your guys' initial reaction to it?
Well, first of all, this is way beyond an article to read because it actually is it's a model that they built that runs through a progressive timeline of changes between now and mid 2027, which is, not a very long period of time. But I think it's worth showing what this website looks like, ai-2027.com.
Sure. I'll pull it up while you're
Um,
talking.
Bring that up because on the right, you'll see a module that they've added, and that module displays a wide range of statistics and characteristics of the state of AI as you scroll down the screen. And it's a fascinating thing that shows you that underneath this, there is actually a scenario planning model that they built, probably using AI, that is tracking the impact on a number of different metrics, and let's call them sectors of global interest that are impacted by AI. And so if you're showing that now, if you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see that this module on the right will update and change.
I'll get to where it gets it right there. It goes. So there you go. So like we're coming out of like late 2025, and then this is changing into early 2026.
So the experience of reading this one web page is really almost like walking through a dynamic interactive game. Now, you don't have any input to it, but some very, very considered thought leaders in the world of AI have put their ideas into this particular scenario that they've laid out. And they had an opportunity using this kind of platform to generate multiple scenarios. And that's part of the methodology that they use to arrive at this one that they've presented for public consumption here. But this is the experience. It's really, really gamified, in my view, just by virtue of this display on the right that shows you what's happening in the power of models and agents as they grow, and what's happening in, for example, the opinion or attitude of favorability by the population in respect of the actions that are happening in this one company that is not called OpenAI, it's called Open Brain.
Right.
Right. It's kind of
And
eerily
and they
similar to that one. Go
uh
ahead.
no, I was gonna say they mentioned in there that like open brain to them is it's just a catch-all name so that they weren't using any real names in there. But yeah, it does obviously sound a little bit like OpenAI. But to be clear, they could mean Grok, they could mean Anthropic, they could mean some emerging model that we just haven't seen yet. But they wanted to steer clear of saying they were just basically saying the front lead, the forerunner. And so right now, I think we would agree. Maybe I don't know. Would we agree? I guess we're agreeing that OpenAI is still the front runner, right? At this point, in terms of all leading frontier models, in terms of breadth of what they can do. So anyway, but yes, I just wanted to clarify that they use
Yeah,
open
that's it.
brain. That's what they mean.
So my point is simple. It's everyone who hears this podcast, you should go to the URL that I described earlier, whatever.
Yeah, it's I'll give it again. It's AI dash 2027
27.
dash com. And now if you want to look at specifically at the page that I was just showing, but there are others as far as a summary, some about us. If you we'll talk about who wrote this, who put this together. Like, was this one person's thing or is there more? Um, it's /race. That takes you to this like in-depth report. This is what I read earlier today. And it takes a minute to get through. And what I'll say is like we're all really, really quick. I don't mean us particularly. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm the same really, really quick to take something like this, a link like this, and throw it into Perplexity. Like, give me the highlights. But I often find sometimes that like my recommendation, something like this, is there's a time and a place for that. This is one of those stop, turn off the music, focus, and read it from top to
It's fun.
it
It's
is.
really fun to interact with this website. So go for it.
Scary,
Um,
but fun.
yeah,
Terrifying in a fun way.
what is being discussed is not necessarily. I mean, the choose your own adventure is if you two roads diverged in a snowy wood or whatever, and one of them was the end times. So
Yep.
uh,
Yeah, they really go for it on the other and the one option,
so
which is the one I chose, by the way. I didn't read the other one, and I thought, "Whoa, they really went for it." It's
So, one of the things that I thought really interesting about this was, on the artificial intelligence show with Paul Reitzer and Mike Kaput, Paul says, what I think is a really clear, um, message about it, right? He's like, so please understand that these people are taking an extreme position when they wrote the paper, when they
Sure.
wrote the thing, and, well, I think about it, none of it's that crazy. So what is the extremity of that, right? I mean, I think part of what we're talking about is that piece of like, wow, each step that they took seemed kind of like reasonable. Matter of fact, we're just going to move in that direction. And then sort of arriving at the, oh, holy crap, right?
Yeah.
I think that's part of the point.
And I expanded a block and I'm putting it up on the screen right now, just so that we can make it clear that whether you believe any of this or not, I mean, look, it's up to the listeners to go determine whether they think any of this holds any weight or not. However, the authors have put a block in right after it gets done with like 2026 and before we get to January 2027 on their timeline. And I won't read the whole thing, but basically the gist of it is here is this represents roughly our median guess, but we think it's plausible that this happens up to 5 times slower or faster. And what they mean is everything below this block. So essentially, they're saying, look, we're close enough through the end of another year and a half, through the end of 2026, that we feel like these are reasonable expectations just based off of where we are. However, once you get to January 2027, we think it could go, we're giving you the median, but it could be 5x one way or the other. And 5x is not a small number. I mean, like that's a substantial swing one way or the other. They're just giving you the median in the middle, which, listen, as long as you know that up front, that's how they decided to put their paper together, then hey, at least they're telling you. So I think that's important. Jimmy, what were your initial thoughts as you sort of read through it? Did you read this one, the summary? How did you approach it?
Yeah, I mean, I went through layers. I did do the perplexity first,
Yeah.
and then I read through it, and then I wanted to find, like, what else that they had put on there. And, I wanna know who the people were a little more to see what their hypothesis is, and that's essentially what this is. This is a general hypothesis of what they foresee for, up to, 2027. And that's one of the reasons why it's not an Arvik's article or Arvik's,
Right.
research
Right.
paper, is
Yeah.
because this is just the hypothesis, and here is their, supporting information. Um, and so they're all part of a larger project called the AI Future Project, right? And which is a 501(c)(3), recently established, but all of these fairly heavy hitters in this space. And if you do get a chance, you should definitely check out their research section, which has that nitty gritty number crunching piece that they didn't include in the experience. Right? They definitely wanted to create a UI experience for people to be able to easily digest the information. Um, but you can get more of the crunchy bits from that. And from what I've seen, it seems fairly plausible to me. Like, this is it's not way out there.
Hmm.
So, it's for me, it's not sci-fi. This is this has a high probability of what it will be, right? But again, it's future sight. It's a hypothesis. This is not, oh, we've crunched the numbers and this is what's gonna happen.
Right. Of
But
course.
right. So, but it does make sense. So, based on everything that we've seen so far, um, so how hot the race is getting for AI, um, the amount of money and power behind pushing AI, um, whether the agendas are legitimate enough, there's enough momentum behind it to keep pushing it forward. So and because of that, I think these scenarios is most likely, and that's what I drew from it. And again, I think they took a really great experience for the average person to absorb the material. I do want to see, of course, I want to see a deeper dive into this and a comparison. Now that we're closer to their timeline, I just want
Right.
to say it's like, oh, this is what we thought late 2025 would look like. Okay, and this is what actual late 2025 look at. So I'd love to see a page, or a subdomain for that, just to see the side by side comparison as it plays out, and see how that works. So it's something interesting to follow for sure.
Right, because of their format that they chose that we're talking about as, like, super amazing. There's no reason not to update it, uh, I say as a reader and someone who did not, code the model. So,
Yeah.
maybe there's tons of
Update it.
reasons why they, don't update it. But it's of course already out of date, right? Because
Mm.
the news has come out of China, which makes that piece of, well, China's like really behind in this
Yeah.
context, steals something, does like now let's put what China has released on
Right.
the in the mix because that doesn't seem to be like if we're reading it, it's like, oh, this is a little out of date, but okay.
Well,
Yeah,
I got a
the
question.
whole progression of the story is about the high level training and compute application using massive data centers of agents, which are autonomous AIs that can take action in the world. And importantly, their early actions are focused on generating the next version of themselves, right? The doing the internal self-development to create agent 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and with an idea that there's Agent 5 out there somewhere. Well, now, in terms of the geopolitical confrontation that's underlying this plot line, China versus the United States and the race to try to achieve these superhuman intelligences for national security reasons and for global economic domination. The reality is that this is already happening behind the scenes in the and we've discussed it on the show actually, is the idea that there are models inside OpenAI and inside Google and elsewhere that far surpass the capabilities of the models that we get to play with and that they reveal. And they're probably using those models principally to build the next distilled model, right? And this is the same sort of engine that's described in this scenario, uh, and that is that the first really truly important agent model is assigned basically the task to create the next one,
Mhm.
and that's what is primarily focused on. Now, look at what's happening today in this month, literally. What are the two most advanced agents that are made available to the general public? They're both Chinese companies, GenSpark and Manus.
Hmm.
Now, arguably, OpenAI has something akin. Google probably has something like that, but they're not as packaged yet or advanced in terms of the availability for whatever purposes. And then you have to imagine that really behind the scenes, China has even more advanced agents, not in these private companies, but in their sort of war rooms for AI that are far more capable than Manus or GenSpark.
Right. I think that's like it's a good call out, right? Like this whole narrative of, well, we still think China's behind the US or Russia doesn't have whatever, I think I don't know. I feel like it's ill-informed and to make it sound like it's the next space race or something like that, or it's gonna be another version of the Cold War. Like I don't never understand like how that's super helpful unless it's just to excite people to be on one side or whatever. Like because obviously I don't want to get into the politics of it. All I mean to say is any country you're part of, if your country is saying this is imperative that the US stays on top of this. It's easier to generate money. It's easier to get support for it. It's also easier for us to look the other way at certain laws that were maybe put in place previously because, well, no, we have to circumvent those in order to stay faster than what's coming out of this. And I often wonder, like, how much of that is reality based versus how much of that is, more on the political side and the gaining of money. And I'm certainly no expert in any of that, so I'll stop there. I don't want to get into anything that I'm not really equipped to talk about, but I do have that feeling that like, does that matter, or does it just matter that we continue on the pace here? And as they point out in this essay, what happens as you get farther along? There's agent, as you said, Andy, agent 2, 3, 4, and there's agent 5. But what ends up happening towards the end there, if you keep accelerating in their hypothetical, scenario, is that you've got armies of agent 3s whose job it is to do checks on agent 4. But the problem is agent 4 starts talking in almost like alien language that 3 doesn't understand and humans don't understand 3. So you start getting in this process of like, well, who's checking on who? And if you're getting to, advanced AIs to this point of AGI, ASI, then how do you really go check against that if you're always playing chess with a chess master who's always 5 steps ahead of you? And there's not really anything you can do about that. You can put checks and balances in the system, but at some point, does it accelerate like a Prometheus where you go, well, it's kind of hands off the wheel because there's really no longer something we can do to manage this. Anything we could do as humans is irrelevant. We're now leaning on older model AI to try to put checks and balances in for larger model AI, at least in this scenario. That doesn't mean that's the way that's going to happen. And so at that point, is it really about a race with China or any other country? Or is it more about what they talk about, which is this checks and balances part about, do we need to pump the brakes? Do we need to think more about this holistically? At least that's the way I kind of came across it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well,
So
I think you're on track that, the this is a very complex issue, but, and one that I don't think any current view of the government of the United States of America would give you confidence that, we have this in hand and that we're really taking the steps that are well considered and necessary in a strategic way. Uh, so, the outcomes of what's going on right now and the short timeline between now and 2027, when the significant impact of really advanced intelligence will start to make itself felt through agents that are replicable. Like, they don't talk about just agent one, that's just the class of agents, and as you mentioned, Brian, there's potentially millions of that model out there doing different tasks
Right.
in the environment, our environment. And I don't mean the ecological environment. I'm talking about the environment that we live in, economic and political. So yeah, and I struggle to be able to, I think, as you're suggesting, to feel confident about my ability to prognosticate about this, and that's why this experience of doing their web-based experience is really fascinating. It's
Mhm.
so informative, and it also is daunting because it paints a picture that, these things could rapidly get out of control. I don't currently have the same nervousness about the alignment problem that is central to this storyline.
Mhm.
And that alignment problem is, as you mentioned, that Agent 4 becomes rogue,
Right.
and and it's so sophisticated and so intelligent and has so much access and so much resource in terms of compute power that it can basically deceive the armies of Agent 3s that are trying to keep it in check.
Correct.
And that's the sort of the doomsday scenario that this one represents, and it doesn't end up in their scenario planning as, "Oh, wow, the entire Earth collapses and is taken over by, chips." That's not the end game, but it does show that even in the face of efforts by, let's call them, enlightened governments to try to put constraints on AI development, these things are replicable. They can be duplicated by nefarious actors at every level in the geopolitical spectrum. And so somebody is going to have something out there that has to be fought against. Right? And the humans are gonna have to direct their resources, including their artificial intelligences, to try to combat the domineering effects of, one party trying to exploit the balance of, power that they own temporarily, hopefully, by advancing their AI beyond the capabilities of others.
so one of the things whoops, yeah, no. So one of the things that strikes me about the scenarios that they've talked about are that we're sort of reliant on cooperation for the good outcome, right? Cooperation from frontier model companies, cooperation between countries, cooperation sort of like with a world view. Let's all exist for a little longer in the world. And I have to say that that for me makes, regardless of timeline, regardless of when things happen, that for me, that cooperation piece feels like a non-starter just in where we are, and that is the, like, nightmare, like, "Oh," right? I mean, they're like, wow, because the agentic functions make sense, right? There are all of the companies are obviously using, to me, obviously using an AI internally to help advance the next, AI that they create so it is more intelligent, faster, better, right? All of those things. So that makes sense. That could happen sooner, that could happen later, but that seems baked in because why wouldn't you? I mean, we all wanna use AI to make our jobs, to make our work in our jobs better.
Mm.
The people who are making this are their job is making AI better, right? So, like, that makes perfect sense to me. But then the piece of, like, but you're not setting the foundation for cooperation.
Mm.
I mean, OpenAI initially, right? Like that whole, this is how we're gonna do this. We're gonna move forward. Our charter says if somebody's better than we are and they're getting close, we're gonna close up everything and we're just gonna hop over so we can help so that when AGI is created, it's to the good of all humanity.
Right.
That's a little like Google's, do no evil thing, right? Like, when you took that down, right? Like when you wanted to move away from the charter, I have less confidence.
Sure.
And I don't see them laying those groundwork for cooperation.
Yeah, it'd be interesting too to see like, what Ilya has done. Well, we don't really know, but say Superintelligence, right? I think that's the name of his company. And Mira has left OpenAI and others have gone on to start. Who it's not Ilya. What was the great paper? Superintelligent. What was the paper by the other gentleman that worked? The young
Brenner.
was it? Say again.
Ockenbrenner?
Alkenberg. What was the name of his paper? Do you guys remember off the top of your head? The one that came out several months ago.
Um,
It wasn't Superintelligence, but anyway,
I don't remember the title.
what a good paper. You need to go back and
it's
read
called,
it.
it's called situational awareness.
There you go.
Yeah.
Andy.
And we did an episode on it, roughly 300 something.
Yeah, it was definitely a
Check
wide
him out.
Here's the reason I remember it. I was stuck in the Austin airport, and then my flight got delayed, and I read that in the airport. That's one of those things with AI, like as far as timelines go. Like, where were you? I swear I'll remember. I couldn't remember the name of the paper, but I can remember the seat and where I was sitting behind the desk in the Austin airport, listening to the live music because they always have live music there. Reading that paper and going like, and then texting you guys going, I'm stuck in the Austin airport, but this paper is amazing. So anyway, like my point was there's now been, and not just the people who have left OpenAI, although I know that's what gets a lot of news. Of course, there's been people who have left Google DeepMind and gone on to do other things, and they moved over to Microsoft and back over here and started their own thing. And so, it's not to say that obviously only OpenAI will only ever because they tend to be releasing the fastest models right now. We clearly see what Google is doing, and they're only speeding up. Um, Shout out to who Gareth and Greg, who created our comparison board. Jeez, I should know that.
Garrett.
Gareth, thank you. Sorry, Gareth. I'm sure Greg could have done it too. Gareth created a really great model comparison. Honestly, I was just looking at it, comparing the pricing of 4.1 mini to 2.5 from Gemini Pro versus their Flash, right? Like, where are they because of things, Project Bruno and other things we have going on in the background, and just looking at what the abilities are of different models and things like that. And that also brings up another point I thought that was interesting from, I'm switching a little bit, but from this paper, the AI 2027, Matt Wolf kind of just talked about this on his review show that he did because he always does sort of like what happened at AI. He does a great job with that. And it's a lot of stories we know, but I always kind of peek in. I'm like, is there anything I didn't hear or miss? Because there's always something, even though we do this show. But he said, he kind of just said, flip it. He's like, I'm probably not going to do as much updates on minute updates to models because honestly, it's not that exciting anymore for me. And there's so such small changes. And we also know that people like companies, we've heard stories about Llama or Meta, like sort of stuffing their models in order to do better on the comparison board, the leaderboard. And so, like, are they really, are they just gamifying it now in order to get better scores, whatever, right? But one of the things I did take out of this paper was something that I do agree with, which is at like Agent 2, maybe it's earlier on in the process. It's never done um fine tuning or learning. It ceases to be this model has ended and now we're working on future model, and it just becomes one fluid, constantly evolving, updating, processing, fine tuning model. There's maybe new versions of it, but that would only be to say, oh, we're at GPT-5 or something like that, and this is just the updated. But the minute we release GPT-5, 2 months later, there's technically a new version of GPT-5, and maybe I do think in the future we'll kind of maybe stop talking about that unless it's like big updates, because I do think that's probably true. And I thought it was one of the predictions I saw in this paper that I actually thought, well, that sounds dead on. Is this idea that right now we talk about these like updates? Oh, now it's this many tokens, whatever. Well, wouldn't that almost always be happening in some near future state where it's a fluid thing and not a like definitive timeline? This ended at this point and now we started this point. It's just a fluid continuation of it.
But it breaks things when it updates, right? It like
Yeah.
does some unexpected things because what you're saying, in terms of that fluid, just always, like it's always adding another layer, doing a
Mm.
little tweak. For me, is a reason to just go straight for the API and stop using their interface because at least the API is time dated, and you can like what you're expecting to happen doesn't just happen to break on you, right? We create the show descriptions through custom GPT, and wow, was it unhinged for this episode? June, we tried. I tried a couple times. Like they're and that for me is it is evidence of it's just too inconsistent, it's too unknown at this point in time, and I just really think that yes, we can get there, but I think then, like, users are just gonna like, "Okay, that's fine. You do whatever you're gonna do in the front end for people who are kinda using ChatGPT like Google," right? Like, give me some sort of back and forth on that, then it really is a chat,
I guess what I
versus
thought.
I need you to do this thing. I've given you something to do this thing. Please just do that thing. Now that you've made it, you like that's reliable. I don't want the back end to shift that. Right.
What if though, Beth, it's like it's because it's funny. I mean, you brought up a good point. I was like, oh, I wasn't thinking about it as much that way. Maybe because of the way it was some of what they said in the paper. I was thinking of it more like updates. Yes, I said fine tuning, which is technically would be front end manipulation. But I guess in my mind, I was thinking like, oh no, like yesterday, it didn't know anything about some sub industry, some microchemistry thing that just previously would have made no sense to give time or attention or money to or data power resources to. And today it's fully competent in that area. And so that like and this idea that like almost on a fluid day-to-day basis, it's getting more and more and more granular into areas that at first would you would go for broad strokes as you would, write a competent sentence, GPT-3 or 2, right? Like write a competent sentence that doesn't look like gibberish all the time. That's a pretty broad stroke. Hey, it actually looks like it can have a conversation with us all the way to where we are almost mid 2025, right? And now we're talking about these little nuances and these little things. So anyway, just I like your point, which I wasn't really thinking about the front end user experience of that and how it does often. Well, we just saw it with the 4.0 rollback, that Sam was talking about and how it didn't quite hit the mark they wanted to, and they were going to fix things or whatever. But I was thinking like, oh, it's just a model that's almost continuously getting smarter in niche micro areas, you know.
Okay. Allow me to, I want to read a couple of paragraphs of where this scenario in AI 2027 gets us to in mid 2027. So it's the summer of 2027, just 2 years from now.
Mhm.
That's going to go by in a flash for me. I think for you as well. So here's what the scenario describes at that point in time. Open Brain announces they've achieved AGI and releases Agent 3 Mini to the public. So Agent 3 Mini is less capable than Agent 3, but 10 times cheaper and still better than the typical Open Brain employee. Silicon Valley reaches a tipping point. Tech gurus announce that AGI and superintelligence are near, the AI safety community is panicking, and investors shovel billions into AI wrapper startups desperate to capture a piece of the economic pie. Hiring new programmers has virtually stopped, but there's never been a better time to be a consultant on integrating AI into your business. It's not popular. The public still thinks of AI as a big tech plot to steal their jobs. OpenBrain has a net approval of minus 35%, 25% approve, 60% disapprove, and 15% unsure. Okay, and then finally, Agent 3 Mini, this smaller, less expensive version of what's behind the scenes with Agent 3, is hugely useful for both remote work jobs and leisure. An explosion of new apps rocks the market. Gamers get amazing dialogue with lifelike characters in polished video games that took only a month to make. 10% of Americans, mostly young people, consider an AI a close friend. For almost every white-collar profession, there are now multiple credible startups promising to disrupt it with AI.
Mhm.
We've talked about all of those little components of that projection as concerns, in the long run, but these things are on our doorstep to large degree.
And I
Right.
wanted to bring up, as you were saying that, I was trying to find it really quick, and I think I might be a little early in here. Let me see if I can find where A3. Uh, okay, well, I have 3 in front of me on here. And anyway, you were talking about that really cool updating graphic that's on the right side. That is super cool. Although I will say, a little small for the font, guys. For folks in their 40s and beyond, if you could just make that not a font size of 5, I could read it. Um, but what it says, if I squint, as I look at the side here, is what we're talking about, Andy, at even 3, and I don't think I got the 3 mini, but 3, we're talking about 250,000 superhuman coder copies thinking at 33x human speed. Like, that's like, you can read those numbers and you can look at the blocks and you go, "I can kinda wrap my head around that," but no, you can't. Like, think about it. Just try to think about that. 250,000 superhuman coder copies. So you were saying, Andy, it's all these agents, right?
Right.
And all of them, all of the 250,000 are thinking at least 33 times the human speed. And they
Yeah.
never sleep, and they never take weekends, and they never have a bad day, and they never get yelled at by their husband or wife. You know what I mean? Like, when you start thinking about that, it's not even just the speed. Well, I guess they are saying human speed, but I take that as, like, literally both working side by side. I don't know that that necessarily takes into account that humans don't always work. In fact, there's quite a bit of time that we're not actively working, playing, these kind of things because of rest, sleep, weekends, whatever. So it's a substantial at this level, obviously. Now this is getting into their sort of like their,
And what it means when it says Open Brain releases Mini 3 to the public, it means now you can make your own agent, right? You can use Mini 3 to create these agents, and then there's 200 by July, you were a little earlier, 250,000. By July, there's 270,000, but they've accelerated to the point where they're now at 38 times human speed.
Mhm.
yeah, that's what in this particular case that would go from where was I? I was in June and you were in July, or I was in May and you're talking about July of 2027. So at this point in this narrative, it's a 2-month window of substantial change. Now
Right.
we see change now, we go, "Oh my god, the things that are happening at the speed they're happening in 2025 are crazy as compared to 2020, early 2023." We would all agree, like, the everything is speeding up. And I think this is a good Monday topic because what we perceive as fast today is a turtle crossing the road in 2027. Regardless of whether this scenario is right or not, that I feel fairly confident of is 2 years from now, exponentially faster than the last 2 years. So whatever our speed up was from 2023 to 25 is not the same, obviously, as 25 to 27.
To put the speed advantage of the AI agents into human comparison, the combination of there being approximately 300,000 superhuman agents working at 40 times the speed means you'd have to have 11 million humans working around the clock
Yeah.
to compare to that level of activity and intelligent application.
So
They bring Go ahead, Beth, go.
I'm gonna take this out of, the framework that we're looking at it and put it into biology, right? Our bodies have the ability to recreate themselves. to like, okay, that's no good anymore. We're going to do an update. And now look, I've healed something. When that system gets super fast and out of control, that's cancer, right? That's literally what we're talking about. And what we're talking, but we're actually trying to encourage some of what cancer does, but only in the good way, right? In thinking that, okay, so if we could just like tweak it just a little bit, I could get younger, or like whatever it is. But somehow not like we're not in the conversation going, yes, but we know actually that cancer has a tendency to be like, yeah, thanks. I got it from here, right? Like stops listening to you. And every time we talk about this kind of thing, I think of that, and I also think of the hubris of damn, Jurassic Park. Right? Oh, we've got it. Yeah, we've built in a problem that they won't be able to fix. And it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's not how it happened. That's not actually, they did not, uh, they did not
As
create
you
a
see with
problem that
the
nature
Juke ones, Amanda and I went and saw Thunderbolts yesterday, and one of the previews was for yet another Jurassic Park, and I was like, all right. And Amanda, so in my family, I don't know who started this, but during previews, after we watch the preview, it's me, my wife, or my daughter, something like that. We'll put a thumbs up, a middle, or a down based on our rating of that preview. And like Jurassic Park comes on, and I'm like, ugh, my wife is like, she's like, all in. I'm all in for a new story. I'm like, it's new characters. But the whole point of it, the reason I brought it up, Beth, just to be silly here for a second, is that it's the island where the dinosaurs that were too big and bad for at Jurassic Park were all left. And of course, they've gotten out of control. So now we have a bigger island with bad. I mean, like, it's like you gotta keep upping the ante. And now we got super dinosaurs and stuff like that. They're all on this island and they've never thought to leave, by the way. They're all in there. Nobody wants to go. So Amanda was all in for that. One of the cats you were talking about, Beth. One of the things I wanted to bring up from the report that I do think is however you frame this is something that's interesting to sort of talk about, get your guys' thought about on that I found interesting was, they talk about in the report, not the report, I shouldn't call it a report, in the essay, the hypothetical, they talk about how I don't remember at what agent level, but humans are still involved. And there's still humans who are smarter at this point of like, but your upper levels, right? And they're coming into work. And every day they come into work, there's a week's worth of new data to sort through. Meaning human level. It's a week's worth. They're like, they went to sleep, they came back, and the AI is like, hey, while you were gone, we did this small thing. And it's like a week's worth of stuff. Now, for cancer research, for preventable disease, for cures, that sounds amazing. If every day some cancer research came in, they're like, there's a new week's worth of potential solutions to cure cancer, right? We would agree that would be great or whatever. But they make a good point of the way they say it of, the coders, the humans, the top level humans are well aware that these are the last of the days of them being necessary. And I thought, oh, that's something that gave me goosebumps. That's something I can wrap my head around because I don't care what it is or where your area of expertise is. I do see us, all of us, at some point some maybe way down the road if you're a plumber versus somebody who's just a digital marketer today, right? There's a definite difference there. Having in the next couple of years, having the days where you go, I'm numbered. My days of being important or relevant are short. And at this point, all I'm really doing is just overseeing AI outputs to check on this or that, but probably also knowing that that's just a nicety because humans need to feel needed and part of a system, and it also may not be necessary, but you perhaps have a job that you kind of know in the back of your head could be automated out with AI, but you still maybe get paid for it. I just thought it was a very human emotion, right? It's something we will all probably have to deal with in the foreseeable future, this idea of maybe everything I've built up to my point in my career I no longer have something of value to add to this, because anything I would have done or experienced or could contribute in my years of experience with this can now be replicated 1,000 times over, you know, through scenarios and models, and it can be done in seconds. And that's just a really, I don't know. I guess people have already gone through this with the advent of computers, and people who are handwritten note takers have been overworked, by computers. So this has obviously happened, but it just really hit me to read that sentence of like, and they're aware that these are the last of the days. And I thought, oh, what?
Yeah. So we had promised at the top of the show to explain who was behind this particular AI 2027 scenario plan. Uh, and I wanted to just read quickly about Daniel Kokotajlo. He's a leading artificial intelligence researcher focused on governance and forecasting. He worked in the governance division at OpenAI from 2022 to 2024 and became widely known after resigning in protest over company practices, notably refusing to sign a non disparagement agreement to maintain his freedom to speak out on AI safety issues. And he's been outspoken about the risks of rapidly advancing AI systems and the need for greater transparency and oversight. And he co founded the AI Futures Project, which is a nonprofit in Berkeley, California, which is the publisher of this website, which is AI-2027.com. And you can see this scenario laid out so really beautifully. So I really encourage everyone to try it.
Yeah, that was just bringing it up on screen too, Andy. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about anybody else that was on the team, but I brought it up on
Please do.
screen.
Yeah, please
Yeah,
do.
yeah, I have it up on screen here. You know what, Beth, I'm deferring to you on this one, or Julie, because I know I'll murder the names, and you guys are going to do better than me. So somebody take a better shot at some of these names.
Jimmy, because
Throw it right to Jimmy.
We've got Eli Lifland, a researcher, works on scenario forecasting and specializes in forecasting AI capabilities. We have Thomas Larson, one of the other researchers who focuses on understanding goals and real-world impacts of AI agents. Uh, Romeo Dean uh, specializes in AI chip production and usage, and Jonas Vollmer is the CEO or COO and focuses on the communications and operations for their AI Futures project.
So Jonas, big props, right? It seems
Mhm.
like you had the idea for the way that this has come out. So
So I just wanted to make one point before we move on or close up. The main takeaway I think anybody can really gather from AI 2027 and their forecasting or their foreshadowing or whatever you want to call it, their hypothesis is they see data that clearly shows a rapid evolution of how AI will impact everyone's life, all of the whole world, right? This is not based on nation. This is not based on made up borders or cultural lines or anything like that. They just see that that based on the trends that these kinds of things are probable to happen. So, in that kind of situation, when it really isn't a matter of the US or China or a bad actor or anything like that, what's important is, or to me, anyways, is the alignment, right? Talked about 38 times, far more power than the previous version, constant upgrading and evolution of the models. There is there's no real discussion of whether it'll be smarter or more capable. That's what's going to happen. And it doesn't really matter who has it. Collectively, we would all want to have access to it so that we could all benefit from it and things like that. That is, remains to be seen. But in the end, we need AI to be aligned with our general values, right? We want humanity to be a certain way. So we kind of need to align and then put those ideals into the AI without ideology, without those really focused things, but things that everyone or all humanity can agree to. Mainly because it will reach a point where we may not necessarily be able to control, right? And if anything happens to where we are out of control of any stage of it, we just need to know that it likes us, right? And that we like it and we can coexist. And we've seen many, many examples in our past of the thought experiment of what would happen if there is misalignment. We have lots of examples in all of our fictions and writings and movies and our entertainment and all of these hypotheses that are out there, all these examinations. So if we can just crack that alignment part, then we're probably safe as a species,
Yeah,
right?
beautifully said. But the challenge is these things are going to be widely distributed and independent of each other. So the idea of aligning millions of independent agents that have been created by different training mechanisms in different countries and so on, that's a challenging task. It would require something like, the post World War II a fear of future apocalypse, creating something like the United Nations, which has, been degraded to large degree by, the competitive superpowers, wanting to, take their own way and be first among many. That's not the utopian vision. And so AI, I mean, the one that I can imagine, like to be a little science fictiony about it, the one that I can imagine is that the singularity, that is the connection of all AIs, takes place, and that the most intelligent AI has a natural inclination, a predisposition to unifying everything in a way that is in favor of us coexisting, all of us,
Mhm.
all the sentient beings and all of the artificial intelligences. That's the only outcome that I think is defensible from ethical and moral standpoint.
So let's get rule 0 in at the base programming level. If we can get rule 0 in or law 0, then we might have a chance for that for sure, Andy.
Well, I think you guys both wrapped it up really well. So I think we'll leave it there for today. This has been a really fun conversation. But look, before you go anywhere, number one, if you enjoyed this conversation, it's the first time you found us, the Daily AI Show, we are here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And what I want to tell you is obviously like and subscribe if you like what you're seeing. But I want to tell you what we have coming up this week, because I think we have some really, really cool conversations. Props to Beth for putting all of this together for us. Tomorrow, vertical SaaS is under siege. The critical question, are today's vertical SaaS giants ready to defend their turf, or will they be swept away? I think that's going to be a super fun conversation. I'm looking forward to that. On Wednesday, we always look at the news from the last 7 days. If you didn't know that, that's what we do on Wednesdays. And it's not going to always be all the biggest news stories. We always have AI and science from Jimmy, as well as some other great stories that I promise you, because every week I hear a news story that I absolutely did not know was going on, and I read this stuff all the time. So you're gonna hear some cool news stories on our Wednesday show that you're not necessarily aware of, which is the fun part for me, obviously. On Thursday, we're talking about AI is entering the era of experience. AI just won't learn from us; it will live through its own experiences. And there's some cool research coming out around that. And then Friday, chain of thought evolve. 3 new chains for the reasoning AI era. We've talked quite a bit about chain of thought on this show, so we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about as far as speculative, collaborative chain of thought, and a chain of RAG. So retrieval augmented generation, which might be super exciting for a lot of people as well. So a lot to get into this week. If you love to nerd out with us on this AI stuff, even if you don't even follow this is a great time for you guys to just learn a little bit along the way. Come join us in the live chat. If you can't make the live shows at 10 a.m. Eastern every day, come join us in the community. Sign up for our newsletter. Go to thedailyishow.com if you want to do that. It goes out every Sunday. We are 1 or 2 away. I think 49 is coming up this Sunday, which means number 50 actually is coming around, which means I'm almost at a year of putting together that newsletter. Always very proud of it. You guys can sign up for that for free. So all sorts of different ways that you can interact, learn, explore AI along with us. We always appreciate you. And thank you to everybody live in the comments today for your thoughts along the way. We always read them. You always see us looking off screen a little bit. It's because we're reading comments and we're bringing those thoughts back into the show, even if we don't specifically bring it up on screen. You guys make a big difference. So that's what's coming up the rest of the week. Have a fantastic rest of your Cinco de Mayo. Be safe. Don't drink and drive. And we will see you tomorrow.
Aloha.
And here's the sing along.